Hi everybody, I'm Robert, as you know, and today I will be refuting Theodoro's main proposition of the legalization slash decriminalization of prostitution in the United States. Now, I will begin by stating her two supporting claims. Number one being that the legalization and decriminalization of prostitution will help the economy by way of a tax revenue boost, kickstarting the brothel industry, as well as saving money on prosecution offenses. The second supporting point is that legalizing and decriminalizing prostitution will protect sex workers from their employers, their clients, as well as from STDs. However, there is a much darker side to prostitution that Theodora is not telling us about, and it is for those reasons that prostitution remains at an illegal status in the United States today. So first off, in terms of the economy, even in nations where prostitution is at a legal status, one must obtain a license in order to either run a brothel or to work as a prostitute or sex worker. Regardless of this, there will always be individuals who choose not to pursue a license and who will run their operation illegally. And because of that, they will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, which feeds into the next argument. Whether or not prostitution is legalized in the United States, money will still be spent on prosecuting the illegally run brothels and prostitutes. According to the New York Times, about $14 billion is estimated in tax revenue to be made from legalized prostitution in the United States. But let me ask you this question. When you pay taxes, I'm not saying any of you are going to solicit the services of a brothel, but whatever you pay taxes for, where does that money go to? It usually doesn't go somewhere where you want it to. Let's say you want to spend money in education, well, too bad, it's going to the military. If you want to spend money on healthcare, well, again, sucks for you, it's going to go to some development. So, your money's not going to be going where you want it to go, is the bottom line. Second off, I would like to give a few anonymous testimonies given by prostitutes conducted by an interviewer named Melissa Farley of Mercatonic.net, a family values-oriented website. Now, we all know that prostitution, by and large, is the very embodiment of objectifying women. In fact, the anonymous John stated in his interview that soliciting the services of a prostitute is the equivalent of renting an organ for 10 minutes. One anonymous prostitute called her job paid rape, another voluntary slavery, and a third internally damaging. This doesn't sound like something I want to legalize, at least in my opinion. In terms of the protection of these sex workers from their employers, clients, and from STDs, as far as that is concerned, this data taken from a survey from the Netherlands where prostitution is legal. The women who experience the highest rate of murder, sexual assault, general assault of any kind are sex workers. The statistical breakdown is as such. 70% experience physical assault, 40% experience physical violence / rape, and another 40% are coerced into servicing their job. Now, we all know what coercion means, Title IX and all that, but a little bit more on that. Even in nations where prostitution is legalized, the prostitute still reserves the right to refuse service to anyone that she does not feel warrants her services. However, by way of coercion, the John is able to strong-arm, if you will, the prostitute by way of bribery or other means into servicing him. Examples of coercion in nations that legalize prostitution, again provided by Ms. Farley, are of the following. In the African nation of Zambia, an anonymous prostitute gave her testimony of, in order to feed her 5 children, 1 bag of cornmeal a day, she had to administer at least 5 blowjobs. In our neighbor to the east, Nevada, USA, another anonymous prostitute recounted her own tale of her parents selling her into a legal brothel at the age of 16. And from then on, she went on to use psychiatric drugs for the rest of her life to endure the pain. As far as STDs are concerned, there are no statistical data or analysis that prove where the STDs originate from. Of course, there are tests that screen both the prostitutes and the Johns for STDs. However, it's going to happen either way. There are several STDs that go under the radar, such as gonorrhea. We don't know when they're going to turn up, and they will turn up anyway, regardless. And with that being said, I hope that you will see beside me in my point that prostitution is a vile, objectifying profession, and that it should remain illegal, at an illegal status in the United States today. Thank you.
Okay, Robert, the organizational structure at the beginning is fine. You suggest that there's kind of a counterclaim that you're going to be talking about in the process, and it does come up, and those are the kind of negative aspects of prostitution. That's okay. I do think you might want to make that argument a separate claim instead of kind of burying it in the two other points that you're talking about. I think that that might be an argument that's outside of the purview of the advocate's claim, though, about what the benefits would be, except that it's a general response, so it's tangentially related. And since the argument really does talk about legalization, we're going to give you a little bit of leeway on that one. You signpost the first point adequately. I think you're pretty quick to grant this $14 billion estimate that the New York Times came up with. I assume that that was something that was cited by the advocate, because you don't really provide the citation there. So I just assume you're going on with the information that they presented. It seems to me like that's an awfully big number. When you're talking about what the likely revenues would be, it's a pretty small number when it comes to what we're going to be able to do with that. Your argument on this point, though, feels like it's kind of off kilter. It basically comes down to, well, you don't know where that money's going to end up going anyway. And I'm going, well, why is that relevant in this particular point? If we've got $14 billion more than we had, that seems like it's a pretty good deal. I think this would be one of the places where you could kind of connect that argument, and you sort of do with this objectification issue here, by pointing out that in essence, the people who are going to profit from the objectification of these women are us. And what does that make us? Well,
John's.
No, John's, they pay. Who gets paid?
Pimps.
Pimps.
Yeah.
All right, so the American people become the prostitutes' pimps because we get the benefit of their activity. All right, I think that's maybe the way to make that argument. We're getting a little bit, like I said, into some value and policy issues here, though. On the issue of the protection from the potential problems that come, you did have some information about how sex workers, even in places where it is legal, continue to be threatened, beaten, coerced. That's fine. You've got the example in Zambia, though, is really just the same argument before. This is an economic decision that somebody makes in order to be able to feed themselves. I think that might tie in a little bit with that objectification argument that you made earlier and suggest a reason why we should, potentially see this in a negative way. Again, that's slightly off of the argument that's being presented there. The challenge on the STDs needs to be a little bit stronger. You needed to analyze the advocate's evidence and reasoning a little bit more, although I thought some of the counterclaims that you presented were reasonable. Okay, thank you.